And welcome back to tonight's Big Picture Rumble with me, Gianna Caldwell, TJ Helmstetter, and Laurie Sanders. And let's get back to it. Rush Limbaugh and Elizabeth Warren are on the same side of an issue. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, or as I prefer to call it, SHAFTA, on the Southern Hemisphere Asian Free Trade Agreement. On a recent episode of his radio show, Rush blasted the proposed trade deal and Republicans for supporting it. Listen.
So now Elizabeth Warren wants to know what's in this thing. She wants everybody to know. And they're saying, nope, nope, it's too incendiary. And there's a reason why they don't want us to know. Nobody would support this, folks. Which makes it even the more curious why so many Republicans are trying to save this.
There's got to be maybe the third time in the 13 years I've been doing talk radio that I agree with Rush Limbaugh. And I don't remember what the other two are. I just remember when they happened.
When the right and left agree that it's a bad deal, it must really be a bad deal.
Yeah.
Thom, even a clock is right twice a day. I mean,
yeah.
I hate to use the broken clock.
Stop clock, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, Rush Limbaugh, I have no idea what he's thinking, but what we do know is that, you know, TPP is bad for consumers, workers, and bad for democracy.
Well, we don't really know that because we haven't read it. Which
the little that we do know, we already know, based on
from
the parts that Elizabeth Warren is particularly concerned about, the ISDS, the interstate dispute settlement clauses. That's just anti-democratic.
Yeah, right.
Well, so I was actually going to go in the complete opposite direction and say that I think they're both wrong. So to be clear, we don't know a lot of details about TPP, and so not speaking about TPP specifically, but both, Warren has been very anti any trade deal. She's been very anti anything that might happen in this direction. And frankly, I think any steps that we can make towards free trade, yes, I wish the deal was more transparent. I can't say anything about whether or not it's good or not at this point because we don't know.
But this is not free trade. This is 6,000 pages of regulated trade.
What the disappointing factor is the fact that Congress has no access to it. So the people that we send to D.C., our elected representatives, they can't see the details, and the president can classify any of the details in the agreement that he wants once he sends it to the floor. So again, they will go and vote on something that they really don't truly understand and have the knowledge of. That's the disappointing factor in this deal, and I think that's why so many people don't like it.
Yeah, I agree with Gianno here. Yeah, senators and members of Congress are allowed to go into a locked room with 1,000 pages and, rifle through the thing, but they're not allowed to bring in a notepad and a piece of paper or any staff members to actually interpret it for them.
And the vast majority of it is actually variations on existing laws. So instead of saying, now you must not steal any more Disney copyrights, instead it says, Section 304 of Article 26 of Law 19104-3, passed in 1947, shall be modified by the word "and" being replaced with the word "or."
The administration argues that they've been providing plenty of briefings to members to make sure that they understand each phrase. But the fact is that that's only one side of the argument, and that people who have legitimate concerns aren't allowed to talk about those concerns because they'd be breaking confidentiality.
Yeah, it's like Ron Wyden asking Clapper if he was spying on the American people, and Clapper lying to his face, and Ron Wyden not being able to say you're lying because then as a senator he would have been breaking the law that the director of national intelligence just broke.
And one point that we did mention is the fact that Representative Paul Ryan and Chairman Hatch, they came up with a bill which would allow for more transparency when it comes to trade deals of any administration, which makes sense. And it would also give the public details about those deals, which makes sense. However, it gives the president fast-track authority, which doesn't make sense to me.
Was that a proposed
disagree.
amendment to fast-track?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the TPA is a very good thing. If Congress had gotten its job together earlier.
Fast-track? It's a good thing to say that our legislative officials are limited to 88 seconds of debate on a topic that is going to consequentially change the nature of the American economy for the next generation?
Sure. So fast track aside, sorry, not to get bogged down on fast track, I think that, frankly, Congress missed its opportunity, because what TPA should do is set the parameters that Congress, the people we elect, feel are correct in negotiating trade with another country or a group of countries.
The Constitution has already established that. Trade deals between countries are called treaties. Treaties require 2/3 of the Senate. Period. The House isn't even involved. I mean, this is a treaty. This should not be dealt with as a trade agreement. We've been doing this little fraudulent dance now for, what, 45 years, I think?
I mean, wouldn't it all be easier if we could just have free trade, right? It's a shame that it's so complicated. I mean, it's really insane, frankly, that you lock people, you're right, in a room with a document that's thousands of pages long when we know that free trade is the #1 thing that's lifted people out of poverty across the world,
you know
that's lifted up the American economy. I know we completely disagree on this one, but we could just make it
but don't send them
simple.
overseas. That's the
Okay,
issue.
the Republican Party wants to add in Malaysia into this agreement. Malaysia is a country that has a form of legalized slavery. We're going to talk about just free trade with them that would lift up their workers. How?
Yeah.
It wouldn't.
Since 1970, when we started liberalizing trade, more people have come out of poverty than anything something like the United Nations or foreign aid could
Except
take
in the
credit
United
for.
States, where more people have gone into poverty.
But
because
that's relative
also
poverty.
correlation
Compared
is
to the
not
people who are living less than
causation.
$1 a day across the world, we don't want to lift them
I prefer to
up.
compare America to Europe than to South America or Africa.
So then
To
should
your
we just
point,
not think
TJ,
about South America and
There's an
Asia?
amendment that they wanted
Let
to
them
put
do
on
it
which
themselves.
disallows for them to continue the sex trade in Malaysia. So that would cancel out that issue.
Yeah, more of the amendment. But the fact is, there's a lot of nasty stuff in here.
That's true.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Well, there's a lot of nasty stuff in there that you don't know about.
You know what empowers people to get out of nasty regimes? Economic empowerment.
I agree.
Causation is not the same as correlation.
Yeah, amen. With former New York Governor George Pataki's announcement Thursday.
Who?
Right?
There are now 8 Republicans officially running for president in 2016. That includes everyone from real contenders like Marco Rubio to total long shots like Ben Carson to glorified snake oil salesmen like Mike Huckabee. So, who are the real contenders and who are the grifters? Who are the guys who are just trying to sell books and jack their speaking fees up by $50,000 a whack?
Oh man, everybody looks this way.
You're right.
So it's funny because I think more of the real contenders haven't actually announced and most of the fake contenders have announced. So to be clear, I think Rubio, I think that Rand Paul, I think that Ted Cruz are all very real contenders. I think Scott Walker will be a real contender. I think Jeb Bush will be a real contender. I think most of the rest just would like a book deal or a Fox News show.
That's right. I think this is a problem that Fox News has created for itself. Half of these guys just want Fox News contracts. And they are all guys, of course, except for Carly Fiorina.
Yeah, who probably wouldn't turn down a Fox News contract.
Oh, no,
too,
not
but
at all.
It's like, what does this say about our democracy? What does it say about the Republican Party? Has the Republican Party become a scam too? I mean,
I don't think it's necessarily different than the fact that in the Democratic Party you can't get any candidates. We suffer from very different but similar
we
problems.
got Bernie Sanders. We got Martin O'Malley apparently on Monday.
Also
That's
the most
true.
accomplished woman in the history of our nation. So.
Yeah, because dynasties are awesome.
Yes, just like the Bush dynasty, right?
Yeah, they're the best.
Okay, all right. All right, moving right along. Ted Cruz. Oh, Ted Cruz was opposed to federal aid for Hurricane Sandy victims. In fact, he personally held it up for 3 months, if my recollection is correct. Those people, they just want welfare, right?
No one said that.
Damn people on the East Coast,
No one said that.
Yeah,
No
well,
one said
no,
that.
well, whatever he said. But
No.
here's what he's saying now.
The federal government's role, once the governor declares a disaster area and makes a request, I am confident that the Texas congressional delegation, Senator Cornyn and I, and the members of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, will stand united as the Texans in support of the federal government fulfilling its statutory obligations and stepping in to respond to this natural disaster.
So, it's not good when the federal government helps out people in New Jersey, but in my state, I guess that's what you're supposed to do when you're a senator, right?
You have to
Represent your own
read
state.
beyond the headline in this situation. The senator only opposed Hurricane Sandy additional funding. This was more than what FEMA gave out because it's had in it what is known as a Christmas tree among lobbyists. That's when you add on your pork projects and every other thing that some other member of Congress wants to finance. That's the reason why he was against it.
And half of
In
those
this
branches on the Christmas
situation-
tree came from Republicans.
In this situation, you have what is the statutory requirement, which is after a governor puts in the disaster declaration to go and fulfill that through FEMA. So that's simply what it is. What's wrong with him advocating for his state? That's what he was elected to do.
Let's be simple.
that
Ted Cruz is a hypocrite. That's simply what it is.
That's
Ted
not
Cruz is a hypocrite.
hypocritical.
You mentioned welfare. Let's talk about welfare. I am from New Jersey, which was devastated by Hurricane Sandy. And in a typical year, New Jerseyans pay $1 to the federal government and receive less than 50 cents back, usually around 48 cents back, compared to these red states that take 75 cents and 79 cents in the case of Texas. But in the case of Mississippi and Alabama, we're talking about $2 back for every $1 they give. You want to talk about a welfare state? That's these red states where people like Ted Cruz are from.
Laurie?
So I don't actually want to talk about welfare. What I think this should draw our attention to actually is, we could get so far outside of this hypocrisy conversation if we would think more carefully about mitigation and things like that in this country.
Mitigation?
I mean, mitigation. We know
Like
that
mitigating
disasters are going to happen.
So you're saying let's stop global warming because we have 5% more moisture in the atmosphere right now than we did just 50 years ago.
We should have a revenue-neutral carbon tax with EPA preemption, and I would be pleased with that.
Okay, cool.
This is a reasonable Republican right here.
I guess so.
I am a pragmatic libertarian, but my point is we spend a ton of money subsidizing people to live in risky flood areas, subsidizing people who, frankly, I mean, it's a very tragic and hard situation to talk about people who are living in these houses that we know have a high risk of running into problems like this. But most of them are rich people. Most of them are people who could afford the risk on their own and don't need federal subsidies. And for the people, it is. Most of the most monies, and I'm not talking about in New Jersey. I'm talking about for the National Flood Insurance Program as a whole. Most of the money flows to people who are wealthy. And for the people who are poor,
basically, yeah.
And so for people who are poor that we subsidize to live in this area, those are the people who can't escape when a disaster happens. So we're paying for rich people's subsidies and we're putting the poor in danger. What we should be thinking about is mitigation and how do we get people to live in safer areas? How do we better take care of the communities that are at risk? How do we encourage states to invest in mitigation? We work on this a ton. This is something I'm very passionate about because it is a waste of money. And then you get people like Ted Cruz seeming hypocritical when what they should be talking about is responsible management of their state and making sure that people are living in safe areas.
Well, this is a disaster, and he was advocating for his state, and this is what he should be talking about now. It's not necessary, and no offense to you on mitigation, but right now the people are hurting, and they need somebody that's going to advocate for them right now.
Yes,
So,
but
and
the
the
problem
people
with
of
this
New
situation,
Jersey are happy for Texas to have that money.
And I'm glad. See, look, I like how you think on this.
The problem with this situation is that as soon as the disaster spending is done, everyone forgets about it until the next storm happens. No one talks about mitigation in the meantime, and there's so much that we could do to make people safe.
It's like the Farm Bill.
Another time I was here, though, Tom, we were talking about how Jeb Bush refused to actually comply with the, what FEMA required in state preparedness plans. I think that FEMA actually wants to have more accountability here, and it's a lot of these climate change deniers who actually don't want to comply because then they'd be admitting, science.
Yeah.
No,
to be
that
clear,
was
that a lot
actually
of
about
floodplains aren't
training
necessarily
with
on the coast. It's not necessarily always going to be related to climate change. It could be rivers, it could be lakes. These aren't all climate change
my
related
point
problems.
about the climate change is that we have 5% more moisture in the atmosphere right now. Scientists have been saying for decades you're going to have more, wilder storms with a whole lot more water coming out of them. I mean, it's just that's what happened in Texas, I think. Anyhow, Gianna, TJ, Lori, great to see you all. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.